mankind who are believers, and even those who are enemies, believe they have the whole schedule of the last days figured out, the order in which everything's going to happen, the length of times, the dates. I was reading Ezra 4 in some collections. It's called Ezra 2. And Ezra was showed an illustration because he asked, how long are the last days going to last compared to the days that had already passed? So from the creating of the earth, the creating of man, to the time of Ezra, compared to the last days. And he was shown a fire, a huge bonfire, and it left a trail of smoke that just continued on. And then he was shown a storm cloud, just a huge storm, rain, wind, and then it passed, and there's trail of mist and fog and dewdrops and raindrops and moisture that lingered. And he was told, so just like in the beginning, there were huge signs, and it was big and eventful, and huge numbers of people, complete tribes that were faithful and considered righteous and will be resurrected to righteousness and go right into paradise. And the last days will be longer. And in the scripture in Ezra, it says that in the times to come, there will be a people who I will not perform signs for, who will not know me, but will believe me anyways. So the last days are going to last longer, and the fruit is going to be more sparse than before the time of Ezra. And then that is further affirmed when it talks about the last days, and it says it is better to live through them than to die during them. Because as long as we're alive through all the tribulations, we have the opportunity to repent. Another thing that people have wrong, they think that the righteous, will be raptured and all of that. And the description given and then reinforced in the writings, the Dead Sea Scrolls that I'm reading after reading the book of Ezra, it is going to go on until all of rebellious mankind is dead, and all that is left are righteous people. And it says, and this is probably where the quote in the New Testament comes from, it says that in a city, only 10 will survive and come out of it. In a field, 2. People hiding in crevices of rocks and in thick thickets of trees. So this is going to be, you're in it for the long run. This tribulation comes on. It does comfort and says, God will save the righteous. But they from the time of the destruction of Jerusalem, they were to live like pilgrims in the land. If they were creatures, probably at this point, shopkeepers, sellers of merchandise, to live as if they're going to move on. No matter what they did, if they were planters of vineyards, to plant as if they were not going to eat the fruit. Because in the last days, the righteous will build, but then the unrighteous will take it away. And I have seen that in my life. I have known that when I move, I can't ever take anything with me. I will prepare like a bug out bag. Alright. The end comes, the shit hits the fan, I'm gonna bug off. I got a bug out bag ready. No, I'm stuck in those circumstances till I eat through and use everything in my bug out bag. Can't take anything with me. And I move into an apartment. Okay, so I'm in the apartment. I prepare, get everything all ready for an apartment, stuff to be able to move, to take care of a household. I'm not allowed to take any of it with me. And it's the spirits of the air that do this. Make sure that we are completely devastated of all assets before we leave. And I've noticed that if I do get any amount of money, it is for an allotted time. It is supposed to serve me during that time. And it always turns out that the money is gone when it's time for me to move into my next set of circumstances. So I just developed the habit of not investing in things. And the Israelites were told that that's the way that they should live. It would have been nice to have a heads up and all of that. But it amazed me also that they wouldn't have understood it back then. But what was prophesied to, for example, Ezra, about babies being born in the 3rd month and then living and being raised into adulthood. We have premature babies that survive and grow up into adulthood these days. And that wouldn't have been possible in the time that Ezra lived. Because all that technology had been washed away with the flood. And then it does talk about there will be multiple destructions. So people talk about the Tartarian Empire and the mud flood and yes. It's not the only one. They talk about, resets. Now our government openly talks about resetting everything. So even though each and every one is not described and foretold as clearly as, for example, the flood was, it is foretold that these worldwide destructions would happen. And it does warn that there are floods, there are famines, there's destruction everywhere. But in some places, people will have inexpensive food and an abundance of it. So they'll think that, we are righteous. That's why it's not happening to us. And that is a snare and a trap. So I'm trying to remember if there's anything else from these readings that apply to the time of the end. Another thing that's clarified is the chosen, what's called the chosen ones. Those are those that are faithful to God. And in Lumex, writings. The holy ones are the sons of heaven, the angels. And in other writings, the watchers are called guardian angels. And it was interesting to note, too, that Enoch was counted amongst the holy ones. So he was already considered to be of the same status as the angels, because they talked to him, they communicated with him. He was, they looked to him for advice, to plead on their behalf. He was counted among the holy ones. I thought it was interesting too, because not only is vengeance God's, but grudges as well. Holding a grudge. No. Amongst, within the congregation. Somebody was just speaking about a story about another pastor. They themselves were a pastor, and another pastor, they had a falling out, and they were not comfortable with one another, never, walked in the same circles after that. And something happened that resolved that issue. We are not to have grudges. And there was expulsion from the congregation if you were a grudge holder, if you slandered people, false accusations, all of it. I mean, I'm finding out a lot that modern day congregations have questions about, debate over, and it's already been clarified. And that is probably between the date and that the Messiah's name is in that book of Ezra, and it was in the book of Melchizedek. So the Jewish people knew Yahusha. They knew that name before he was even born. They knew what his name would be. And so that's why all these texts were removed. Also, so many of us will get into circumstances like I found myself, and out in the field, where you're kind of forced to contract yourself, your time, your hours. Like, oh, and I want you to do this too, when the verbal agreement was that you would only do so much. And so that is also a form of stealing, and is punishable in the congregation. So you want to make formal contracts with people in front of witnesses. Like when I got in these circumstances, I did have a witness to what was agreed upon, and then so much more was demanded of me. And it is not the time of year to be going off on the street. It is not the political climate to be. The things that they're doing to the homeless nowadays is just. And I have pets counting on me now. So it was like I totally was forced. It is just insane. So that in itself is an evil. But I resolved that. I took care of that. That is no longer the case. I am no longer being forced to do things that were not part of the original agreement. Our Creator gave me a way to approach it that clarified it. And basically, I'm living in a gifting exchange now. There's no obligation. So that's just an example of how to make it through this time that is going to last a whole lot longer than people expect it to last. There's not going to be any magical lifting up avoiding all of it. We will be protected, as I have been protected. However, live like, be prepared to be homeless at any time. Do not get invested. Do not, build up a big business and put your faith in that and have access to inexpensive food and think, oh, I'm good, I'm okay. But not prepare yourself in even the smallest things, like what kind of media are you watching? All of those things. Who are your close friends? How do you spend your time? It's just narrow path. And that was another illustration in this book of Ezra, was, like a big, huge, beautiful city, the most pleasant place to be, but to access it, like there are moats on either side, or on one side, and a fire on the other side of the road. Like, you can't get to this city unless you walk that straight, narrow road, because the city's protected by all these, moats and bridges and things like that. So you have to stay on that path. It's a narrow path. You can't go to the left or to the right. You can't, daze off and, wander into the fire, fall into the water. You have got to keep your focus. You got to stay awake. You got to make sure your stuff is managed. You're not wearing anything, holding anything, carrying anything, pushing anything that's going to, get you off that path. So, also in the Damascus document, it speaks of an angel of obstruction. So if you take an oath to return to the law, to the Torah, which for those of us who are Gentiles, that would be like the Noahide laws, which even the sons of Jacob talked about. No, remember the law given to Noah? So it was the law is given to Noah, passed down to Noah, and then for the Israelites, it was expanded with Abraham to include other things. However, those who are descendants of Noah, who are faithful, those are discussed throughout these banned books. These books that are not accounted as part of the canon. Giving in marriage to one that is improper to give your child in marriage to, that falls under the forbidden mixtures. Like, you shouldn't mix flax with wool. You're not supposed to graft trees. That falls under there as well. So these are just the little things as we go through, because it's going to be a long period of time. So we're going to need all the details. This isn't going to be a, yes, I accept this Greek name into my heart, and we're, all right, I'm saved, and we're going to be lifted up. It's 7 years of trip. No, it might be a lot longer than that. One wife, one husband. Apparently the excuse is made for like David and Solomon, because these scrolls, a lot of them were hidden and only given to the wisest to pass on, or were hidden until the time of the end. And so the commandment that reinforces, one man and one woman, was not available to David or Solomon. So that's why it is reported that they had more than one wife, because they didn't know. And nieces and nephews marrying aunts or uncles, that is uncovering the nakedness of their parent. And so that is not to be done. You do not marry aunts or uncles. That's no. Also, keys to understanding different phrases in the scriptures. The books of the law, where you see the tense of the king used, that phrase, tense of the king, in the scriptures, that's the books of the law. The king is the congregation. The foundation of images is the books of the prophets, so that's Ezekiel, Nehemiah. The star is the interpreter of the law, so you will be given the morning star. You will be given the spirit that will help you interpret the law. Snakes are kings of the Gentiles. Their wine is their customs. Again, I just made a video about the Whore of Babylon. And so the wine she gets drunk off of is their customs, their traditions. So you can make a lot of money with bride prices and stuff, you know. Oh, you go ahead, you deposit this bride price here, and then gaining interest off of it. Keeping the money for people who sell specific religious items, wedding dresses, everything associated with customs that is an expense. All of that money, all of that wealth went and was held in Switzerland to avoid having to pay taxes, and if they got in trouble, their government couldn't take it. The poison of vipers, the chief of kings. The person who melts in the crucible is the one who enjoins themselves to the holy ones, then tires of obeying virtuous rules. So then that one would be expelled, and you would not share work or wealth with such a one. You're not supposed to kill an animal with a fetus in it. So, like, even abortion, we have, like, this was a recently learned thing reading through the Torah, that you're not supposed to spay or neuter your animals. It's a thing. And now I learn that even worse is when they spay or neuter. Like, when they do the female, if she's pregnant, they will kill those puppies in order to spay her. So abortion applies to animals as well. You don't kill an animal, a pregnant animal, like hunting. And that's probably why originally when hunting laws were made, it was for a certain time of year when they knew, for example, like the does amongst the deer would not be pregnant, that the fawn will have reached an age where they could fend for themselves. Because originally, believe it or not, the United States was a God-fearing nation. So again, in the book of Ezra, a great insurrection will come upon those faithful, and then it will be known who are his chosen ones. So many are called, few are chosen. The chosen ones are those who are faithful through the tribulation, you know, that are the gold melted in the crucible. All kinds of fun stuff. So, preparation for the very long and lengthy last days, which is reinforced by the book of Revelation when John asks, "Who are these?" waving the palm branches, dressed in white. These are the ones that came out of all the nations through the tribulation. Again, prepare to see the entire population of the earth, aside from the faithful, to die around you. unless, as I mentioned in my other video, God decides that certain faithful ones, like Methuselah and Lamech, would fall asleep in death so that they didn't have to see the destruction of the flood. So some will be spared that. And if you're going to be lifted up, raptured, it's going to be if you're like someone like Ezra, Enoch. It was Elijah, not Elisha. One of those. And reportedly, there were other ones. So, unless you're that close a friend of God, no rapture. Nope. There's something else too. It whipped in my mind, and then I got distracted finishing my sentence. Hate it when that happens. But it was about the end. About getting ready to see everybody, the entire population around you die. And again, like it said, it isn't better to die during these times. Oh, and it tells you exactly what happens when somebody dies. The unfaithful, those who rebelled against God, their spirits wander. And there are 7 ways that they suffer. Seeing what they did wrong, seeing how well it is for the people who fell asleep in death that were righteous, and things like that. And then when the righteous fall asleep in death, they're given 7 days to experience 7 good experiences, seeing what the reward was, seeing the future, how it's going to play out, getting that foreknowledge, seeing how it is that we were righteous. Because so many of us think that we are nothing, that we've done nothing righteous. We hear stories, people, they're rescuing children out of other countries, they're performing exorcisms, they're leading prayer circles, they're doing casting demons out of people, they're feeding the poor, they go on missionary trips, and we may be thinking, what am I given to do? Sometimes the little things that we do, what we don't even remember we did, make the biggest difference in other people's lives. For example, temporarily while I was someplace, I would go to the library once a day just to, connect to the internet. And some guy would come in. I only noticed him once because it's just my habit. I just smile warmly at people, when my attention gets to them, like when they walk in a room or something. And the guy came up to me and he says, I've never had somebody smile so warmly at me in my entire life. And he left. Like, that was it. So, that person just became familiar with an experience that they had never had in their life, a warm smile, that it can make a difference. Maybe they started smiling warmly at people. Maybe they started to notice more often when people did smile warmly at them, because he had just never noticed it before. We don't know. But times to come, and how to make it through it. Because I've obviously been living what has been foretold we will have to live through. And dang it all. Before I reached those parts of the book of Ezra, because it was at night, I was like, I can fall asleep in peace and just die in my sleep and just be happy right now. And then I wake up and get the news. Oh, no, honey. No, 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 no. It's going to be a very long time. And you're not going to want to be one of those that dies through the tribulation. Because there's probably more perfecting that we need to do. And sometimes it isn't until people act against us that their heart is revealed. For example, when I was homeless at one point, and I was new in a town, and I was told that I could go into this church and I could rest, and then the guy came to close up the church, and it is raining buckets. It is a downpour. The sidewalks are all flooding, and it's not stopping anytime soon. And the guy says, well, I hope you have a good night, but I can't let you stay here. You can stay under the overhang until it stops. So it's me and my little dog curled up underneath an overhang. During it, of course you're getting splashed. It doesn't stay dry under an overhang. And then eventually I fell asleep on the wet ground in the bushes in the back. And it's because insurance wouldn't let them have anybody stay there overnight. It didn't occur to him, like, maybe get her a room, maybe give her a room in your house, a place on your couch, let her sleep in a vehicle. I mean, I could think, let me go to Walmart, get you a tent, like, there was no second thinking, there's no alternate thinking on this man's part. And he's on the board of directors for this church. But later on I learned, like, they have gay, trans members. The head pastor, preacher, minister himself is gay, and it's a very rainbow orientated church. So yeah, there we go. Things we're going to have to live through and that are allowed to happen to us, because even in the law, for now, because they're going to change that, we're going to have thought crimes, and AI is going to convict people before they actually commit a crime. But before now, it is law that until somebody can be doing everything that is threatening, intimidating, implying, showing symptoms of doing something truly horrible to you, but you cannot have them locked up, put in jail, suffer any consequences until they actually do something to you. And so it is with God. He cannot convict people until they do something wrong. And so he has to allow the enemy to use people and push people. And we are basically the test when we go in. How do people decide to treat us? How much demonic influence do they allow in them to go against us, hurt us, betray us, and falsely accuse us, abuse us, neglect us? And that's one big theme throughout, like, all of anything that is told to be the law is look after the homeless, the strangers amongst you, the orphans, the sick. That is the sum of the law, basically. If you don't know anything else, which days to keep, just be good. Be a defender of the weak with discernment. We know there's a lot of entrapment. However, that's no excuse to never be nice to anybody. Boy, oh boy. Oh, and it turned out that another guy was allowed to sleep in that church after I was sent out into the rain. Wow. So, be aware of everything. And go check it for yourself. Go read all them scriptures. Yep.